Hello, my name is Anthony Wall. Judge Napolitano is a good guy, and I don't mean to point out everyone's making mistakes. These branches of government, individually grouped in together, we have black people's rights of eyes to discern. Their delusions juxtaposed with criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, and their comparisons to each other, individually grouped in together. As the branches of government, too, they are incapable of comparison properly or correlation properly. Nature shows us this. We have James Madison's communications to us replaced, and him as the only founder that we know the name of, specifically. And they had to classify for themselves and for us to appreciate why and how they did not have free speech or they would have been censored. And everyone had to pretend otherwise they would have been censored. Everyone. That was the value of those laws. That's why we're not supposed to separate what witch trials were about from how there was slavery entrenched even against our black people's rights of eyes. Communications by nature itself. In other words, as ourselves. Everyone's still styles of identity theft, fraud, slanders. Then they want to have debates about religion and differences. You guys are still rules with differences, racketeering worse than war crimes, so to speak, so to put it syntactically proper. You got people using words like genocide, no care about who's defining the words genocide. No care about how psychiatry is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, right through world wars too. You guys are differences. Oh, Hitler. You guys want to use that name because, in other words, anything just to force the quality of fact, human nature, or whatever, sequential, force whatever to keep people's words changed and fake when they speak about predicate acts with facts properly. Because that's what this is about. Predicate acts with facts, black people. In other words, we have a differences, racketeering, we have identity theft, fraud, slander styles, manifest three ways as the branches of government individually grouped in together at countries A through Z. The names of the people of the sciences are being and have been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically, delusions raw. Increasingly, they make confessions to people. And we can observe this relative to where and to how the people have to call are being trained, forced, tricked, and persuaded to call people leaders' names or just ignore it. And the people defending the leaders, they're collusions against them too. It's a different. Everyone has to keep differences used the way the breaching method assigned them to be used. We are a different species body than other species bodies. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. Nature's projecting to us, communicating to us about difference. We have nature's communications to us replaced formally. How this was gotten away with, there are interbranch switching and forging names, refusing to get on paper because their whole careers were criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They have already had predicate acts with facts methods and collusion /s of all kinds of natures, with all kinds of mixed natures of organized crimes, consolidated by their roles with predicate acts with facts method /s and or uses of their natures themselves, their definitions of calm or of aggression too, and or of the difference of that. They can't defend that and afford to explain that on paper properly. Increasingly, the state of Connecticut corrections officers and judicial branch officers have roles with organized crime acts and methods on off the campuses, and with the people that at location /s, and the breaching method shows the people that live there and next to it, or just travel by it, where and how they need to hide life progressions while pretending other. Increasingly, it's while they're partaking with investigators, people being recorded dishonestly, and to cover up what actually is recorded. They even have people say things on phone, in other words, Joe DeMoro, I recorded him involved with wire crime acts and methods of Wethersfield police since he was a kid. There are people all along Route 3 in conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch officers, who have rules with educators of a Joe DeMoro and a John DeMoro. Also with sexual and medical offenders of kids with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and per themselves, but also recorded various ways. These are also with judges and their family members involved with them, putting kids that never even saw each other around schools. And some, they try to make a quick example and walk by. In other words, they don't even know each other, mixed with the ones that we don't even know each other at all. There are people who are taking place where they're seating people on campuses. I recorded that exploited too. They should not have hid things from my parents that I recorded. I didn't even realize the extent of it until it got involved with World Trade Center predicate acts. Before the World Trade Center in New York City, which I was in the court as an observer right next to the World Trade Center towers the night before it, and right before the attack, the day before it, the day of it. And that court and names on all sides of that case were attached to faked and changed syntax and forced collusions with intelligence on off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Also has their collusions with former directors of the FBI, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their families in a 2006 case, district court case, as their collusion recorded before and after the World Trade Center attack. After the World Trade Center attack with intercities courts and their family members as timed collusions with foreign and domestic military and people, next to campuses and involved with the families of the leaders of the kids, and the difference of that, or the roles with other kids. These are people putting fake things and change things in databases as collusion /S with all kinds of natures of organized crimes. Most facilitated by roles with predicate acts with fax methods, wire crime acts and methods, self-valued roles with them, digital crime methods. Whiting forensics has roles with people named Napolitano at and next to Fox Connecticut News. And the differences of the guilt of the intelligence at Fox News with wire crime acts and methods. Evidence is crimes, federal evidence is crimes, criminally foreign influence uses of location /S. They have collusions with people with Whiting forensics in Middletown, Connecticut. And as people at Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, next to the state capitol, increasingly collusions at and next to Fox WFSB in Rocky Hill. As people include increasingly collusions with WTNH and their sources along Route 175 and corners on that street are a whole bunch of people involved with predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Increasingly people with the state capitol and my intelligence families near me have a Casper family. I never had a class with them, never saw them around schools. They try to make pretend other, try to make fake exception behind my back too, and they never prevent writing. These are increasingly people involved with too. I caught them involved with a principal child abuser at one campus in Wethersfield, involved with people also intercities with the campuses with confessions, and untimely death at Trinity College is connected to people with a principal upskirt nature, who was forced roles also with foreign and domestic doctors involved with some untimely deaths and organized crimes with their little kids. And it's not legitimate if they have a whole bunch of different countries and boys and girls raised to speak about things like crimes together, while they're still criminally foreign influence, tactically illusions raw. At countries A through Z, then they're showing needs to protect. In other words, increasingly, Eric Oliveri, I never had a word of conversation with Craig Oliveri or Joshua Stryker. And Eric Oliveri is one of the people that sought me out alone on my street to make confessions about his roles with intelligence families near me. And to pretend, he didn't know it. And then I found out about that true later. It's recorded various ways. They're also recorded needing to hide that. And a breaching method showing them they need to hide things. As their roles with people named Scalora with the World Trade Center attack and the Saudi attackers. But both the Scaloras and the Saudi attackers were are used remotely, criminally foreign. Even if that was made up, it's recorded because there are scams with differences. They have criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought readings of sciences, and premise with the principles of that and of religions. The Old Testament and the Quran both have parts that say the Old Testament has a part that says only defend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. No one even knows about that part. I never even heard anyone speak about that part. And then they want to have debates and bring up religion with their evidences while it's tied to like nuclear murders, torture, extortion, and delusion. No, in other words, we don't have an unabridged voice at countries A through Z allowed to be heard. So increasingly, the intelligence community has a Kalal family and a Demoro family involved with the Wethersfield Community Center, with a Judge Smith and a Domain, who's one of the Jewish themed and next to Fox Connecticut News, and Catholic themed, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, leaders of kids, who are roles also with medical offenders of kids, putting fake things in databases. Rick Cianfaglione will tell you he planted evidences with people at the state capitol of Connecticut, in Hartford, Connecticut. Fake ties, fake nature ties to me. Try to make it look like we made plans with that. I'm not type. And he has roles with a O'Brien family and a Collusion family, with multiple police departments and New Britain Superior Court and other courts, with predicate acts on my street in Wethersfield, that he also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have collusions with all sides of Central Connecticut State University and added. And yeah, there's a Paul Zano, also he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with a John Maiano, with people on my street involved with sequence shifts, federal evidences, crimes of them, predicate acts, child abuses, and medical and sexual offenders of kids named Leahy. Put me in fake conversations with them tied to them. And Brian Silver, a bunch of people with the Britain Superior Court have roles with mayors from Wethersfield too, involved with and conjunctions to them, involved with criminal enterprises, private ones, and putting fake things and change things in databases at campuses, using magic tricks by having people tell on people, and then changing and faking what everyone said. And so no one could ever, so everyone, as collusion too, because they're having them repeat fake things as collusion /s that are being used to screen the breaching method increasingly. One of the further child abusers, leaders of kids, with groups of them as families involved in years apart, is further involved with Park Street, Alina's Pizza, with the intelligence community and a Daryl Sullivan, involved with many people with the Wethersfield Police Department with the name Sullivan and the name Colo. They didn't put the whole name, and they are forging and switching names. They do tricks intercities where they do that, and they prevent writing the hell. Well, that's a long time ago. Why do you do that? So they keep the whole careers of them criminally solved in the whole branches of government, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw. These are increasingly people with names next to the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices involved with predicate acts on my street and with my area, with the intelligence community, also fake for them. They're also, oh, look, he's speaking about it. That's why we're thinking they're bringing it up. In other words, putting fake ties, fake nature ties to me. Get me off the fake conversations with the Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts before and after the World Trade Center attack, including I caught them, it wasn't even formally with them. They were asked for help. They affected requests for help from me. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, their family members, and their lawyer, and Hartford courts colluded at West Hartford locations, and with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions, they're putting collusions with overt criminal enterprise, private, even when they're not involved with those cases. They have collusion with uses of those sequence shifts, and the same thing that both sides of cases and the courts and the intelligence are faking together, like the same sequence shifts, as they did with the Ninth Circuit Court forced for them to since it, as Connecticut interstates, as Connecticut's rules with people from Washington, D.C., and people from and New York, a whole bunch of ways with the intelligence community, a whole bunch of people with the name O'Connor, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed all along Route 175, and with people at corners on that street, including there's an O'Connor on that street, has a mother and daughter principal with the name O'Connor that are being coached to make things up about me by the police chiefs in foreign and domestic countries involved, same families involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and medical families that have been putting fake ties to little kids, fake conversations with themselves and with others. A Leahy family has their little girl in there. One of them has their granddaughter in there. The other one is their daughter. Men and women of the Leahy family at Harvard Hospital, a bunch of them are involved with putting predicate acts with facts in databases and refusing to identify themselves legitimately intercities and interstates. These are people involved with the World Trade Center attack in New York from Connecticut, as people involved with corruption in Washington, D.C. that is recorded, also manifest on off the difference of the guilt on at or next to the state corrections offices, and the same thing with the state judicial branch offices, or conjunctive to that, including with wire crime acts and methods and digital crime. Whiting forensics is increasingly wire crime acts and methods of Wethersfield police and people tied to and as Wethersfield Pizza and conjunctions to them personally and professionally involved with wire crimes and drugs and medicines crimes with kids, with people from other countries, and differences racketeering worse than war crimes with the all sides of cases, a bunch of judges and prosecutors and their family members involved with the same house / S with a whole bunch of people from other areas like that, planting evidence on my street with them. Fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. Like a Joshua Julian, too, with the Facebook page of the principal Upskirt Natures campus. He was involved with others, with other natures of organized crimes, and Whiting forensics when I was a kid, now as an adult. They're increasingly roles with news, planting collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And kids are supposed to be studying. They have all these demonstrations and confirmations of their roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, pretending other, time using corners of fake ties, fake natures of ties by little magic tricks that are manifest relative to how the breaching method knew that countries A through Z. At locations, areas, and states, they would only be capable of making confessions to it, not even realizing they were making confessions. And then the church was born, using confessions distinctly, but also non-distinctly, because no one has the quality of fact, sheep nature necessary to get the Constitution unabridged. So to stop it, so they want to use their knowledge of good and evil about this weapon system, that, and they speak about the logistics and strategy. They can't speak. How can they speak about strategy? That the suburbs were designed by a breaching method designed for torture, extortion, in fact, human nature, slavery, therefore physically against every human difference. We are a human species, individual, simultaneous body of a whole bunch of individual bodies. We are a different species, individual body. We are of individual bodies. And the other species, the different species, they are individuals of a whole bunch of individual species bodies of a whole bunch of individual bodies. We have the individual identity of value progression that is not us nor them, but it is anyway. It is what is generating that phenomenon about ourselves. And that's how we get, this is one of the ways we are shown it by nature itself. And we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Nature is showing us it's the difference of its body, which is juxtaposed with all other bodies. Even if you make something up like art, it is juxtaposed distinctly with the order of the finite, or the smallest finite details, with the active details in the simultaneous. English was revealed to teach this, the parts of speech being the invisible but still discernible. And they come with the hyper invisible but still discernible. 3 parts of the rest of its complete identity relationship to itself, are discernibly bound with the individual identity of value / variable progression that's hyper invisible but still discernible. Again, for example, where and how is generating species bodies of individual bodies, and is showing them and us to an extent, that we have the scientific value to understand and to observe that is neither us nor them, but where and how it is all things anyway, including us. It is our complete identity relationship to itself. Nature shows us this too by showing us that nature's has nature's nature. So nature has a nature itself, which is value here, positive as its system, its way, or a special difference is forced from here, as forced space nature transfer, as an identity, a negative identity relationship to its individual groups and simultaneous value progression system. Again, relative to a special difference, but positive and negative, and its identity in relation to itself. Each identity is shown relativity to positive and negative equally, simultaneously. But while we are quality of diffusion, not just in the ways we know, discernible, invisible, but still discernible. It is functional how there is a body of hyper invisible, but still discernible, distinctly from how it is the body of the invisible, but still discernible. As English grammar, for example, with subject, every subject is about the invisible, but still discernible / hyper invisible, but still discernible. For example, we could only appreciate subjects individually finite, grouped and or active, and simultaneously to an extent /s. And where and how we could observe how that's the way nature has us only capable of appreciating subjects. It comes also with nature demonstrating to us how its complete identity and a body of value progression is also more finite than that and greater than that, and with active relativity to that we cannot discern at all, except for that way, for example. So in other words, it's the same body of value / variable progression that we could discern that's hyper invisible, but still discernible because it's not us nor the other species bodies generating things this way. Not just species bodies of individual bodies and it generating all group differences. We have two eyes. Birds have two eyes, distinctly from ourselves, but non-distinctly too, and simultaneous. Again, but that further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, therefore referred to as the hyper simultaneous by me in my videos. And this will be relevant because the Britain Superior Court, Harper Courts, and Connecticut's District Court had collusions with crime scenes. And it wasn't in legal cases. It was on their personal and while they were personally and professionally being used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. The way the breaching method knew they would. As people in West Hartford locations before the World Trade Center attack, who are increasingly involved with people named Collusions and O'Brien and DeMora from Wethersfield, who have wire crimes and falsified police reports with multiple police departments, and the FBI and Whiting Forensics has digital crimes with them. The Wethersfield police have digital crimes with their Facebook page and with the Facebook page of a principal upskirt nature. I caught them forcing, and the interbranch kids too. Identity theft, fraud, slanders. There's more with a teacher from West Hartford with the name O'Neill, involved with Whiting Forensics, with sexual and medical offenders, identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretending fake things and passionate emotions about me through the wire, fake. Then they fake and change what's actually wire report. Whiting Forensics has them involved with Saudis too, and Wethersfield Police falsifying police reports with Saudis, and with the names as their roles a whole bunch of different ways with people with the names Collusions and DeMora, with people named Scalora next to the World Trade Center and along Franklin Avenue and and next to the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices. They have federal evidence as crimes, collusions, also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. A whole bunch of different countries per worse, hiding behind the difference /s of the collusions with itself. Please get them on paper, Judge Napolitano. The courts forcing their ability to force people there to cover up life aggressions for themselves and their family members, and the people with the state judicial branch offices with them, and corrections offices with them. Involve a whole bunch of people in the British Superior Court, have roles of predicate acts with facts on my street since I was a kid from other areas, with the same house /s, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, first forced, but then discovered anyway. They have other natures of organized crimes, roles with them. These are not legitimate roles with the military through wars, too, with the World Trade Center attack and with the Civil War. You guys have replaced what James Madison's plan was about. They had to counter-extort and force everyone to an extent of breaking the laws. And then they had to all hide that, so they still had to be collusion /s with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought laws. Overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Originally, still, we're communicated to about this, which is distinct from what our founders said. They declassified for us to understand and appreciate how they did not have free speech, how no one did, even including our founders. For example, that's why and how. The only founder we know the name of was James Madison, and it wasn't his declassified. Even once he was a president, then too, the fourth president, he still didn't have free speech. So one must teach. You guys cannot get the Monroe Doctrine proper. You can't get the rest of the president's proper. You can't get in other words, if you don't understand that the James Madison's plan and what it was up against and what was entrenched. Not one has wrenched. They're using truths for lies right through our schools where they say, oh, the American Revolution was fighting against tyranny, autocrators. I mean, in other words, it's not, in other words, it's about the principles. It was about James Madison's plan. Everyone was forced to the roles, not the kings themselves were tortured, extorted, in fact, nature enslaved. You guys are changing our founders' plan, which is to force England too, to help us to an extent, and to force other countries too to help us. Everyone's degrading all the power and might that James Madison's plan helped preserve through damage control against. The pilfering of it. In other words, modern countries, A through Z, they can't speak for power or might, but as a fake criminal insidious nature, the positive and negative treatment, and identity, therefore names treatments. There was a fact treatment nature, identity theft, fraud, styles, and identity theft, frauds, and slanders, styles are manifest, where people make subject treatments that are the only people allowed to be heard. They have wire crime acts and methods, and then criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents, pretending, oh, that's why, because he was spoken through YouTube. That's not on paper. They're changing fake in paper. Get them into branch onto paper. And otherwise, anyway, use what I said online here, and not out of sequence with the rat trap games. They have too many collusions with the judicial branch office and corrections offices, and intercampuses, intercities, and intracities through time, intra-campuses and intercampuses, intercultural and intracultural. This is a breaching method that uses differences, black pupil, because nature, again, we are a different species body of individual bodies. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Nature's projecting, communicating to us with difference. If we pay attention, what nature communicates is true always. Is forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to be, replaced. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it is an entire country together. Countries that could only be operated by locations, areas, and states, still operated all self-valued roles with the hyperforeign breaching method Otherwise, that body is sensed. Including if that body is the majority of people, including if it's everyone, and that is adapted to. Any grouping of countries that tries to counter with this breaching method's effective possession over the syntax of A through Z, while it still has it has control of over the grouped voices, individually grouped and together too. The difference of that. You guys aren't following mandated law. But mandated law followed properly, with care and love properly, it fixes everything right from here. So please get Judge Napolitano onto paper. I don't want to bring up his sources and start going, but I need to get the New Britain Superior Court onto paper. Get them on paper, Judge Napolitano. They have your Facebook page. Fox Connecticut News has their Facebook page. They have a Facebook page of a principal of the campuses involved with some sexual medical offenders of kids. The same families have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, not legitimately, where they have unmarked police forms, and they share roles with other countries speaking about crimes, whether still predicate acts with facts, sick, demented, people. Delusions are all too. So in other words, per what's recorded. Get them on paper, one name and sequence, so you can see how they're putting fake things they recorded to cover up what's actually recorded. How they're used remotely since they were kids. Vaccines.